It's been a month and a half since the FIA Championship was last in action at the Paul Ricard circuit in southern France. Michael Crum got a decent getaway from pole position, being tailed by the Aston Martins of Stefan Mucker and Thomas Enger. In the first lap scramble, Mike Hazelman's Corvette was forced over the curb, causing both a puncture and damage to the underside of his car, ending his race prematurely. Crum began to pull away up front, with Marcus Winkelhock coming under pressure from the Nissan of Richard Westbrook. In the JRM Nissan, Jamie Campbell-Walter got a great run down the back straight and passed Clivio Piccioni. Piccioni dropped one position but would then lose more thanks to a spin when battling with his teammate Christian Hohenadel. The frantic pit stop battle saw Lucas Luhr take over in the lead car. When Darren Turner took over from Stefan Mucker, he also managed to leapfrog Thomas Enger when he handed over to Alex Müller. This promoted them up into second position. Darren Turner then put the hammer down, closing to within 1 second of race leader Luhr. Peter Dumbreck then made light work of getting past the Ford GT of Maxime Martin, but his race ended only a few laps later when a problem with the left rear wheel forced him into retirement. At the front, Lucas Luhr held off Darren Turner's charge to pick up JR Motorsport's third win of the season to move he and Michael Crum to the top of the championship. JRM didn't move to the top in the team's championship though, but it was a good weekend as well for the young drivers' Aston Martin racing team, with Alex Müller and Thomas Enger claiming the final step on the podium behind teammates Darren Turner and Stefan Mucker. But it was Luhr and Crum who had the perfect weekend, taking the lead of the championship going into the summer break. So we've left Europe behind and flown halfway around the world for the next round of the championship in China. The recently completed Ordos International Circuit will be the scene for round 8 of the 2011 championship. Ordos originated as the name of the tribe that guarded Genghis Khan's tomb when it was moved to Inner Mongolia back in the 15th century. The city itself is a mixture of classic and modern architecture, with the most striking example being the Ordos Art Museum, making up one of more than 35 scenic spots throughout the city. Education and culture are important parts of Ordos life, with the Ordos Library and Theatre being prime examples. With civilization dating back as far as 30,000 years, Ordos has a rich cultural history, as well as an abundance of natural resources such as coal and gas. The GT1 drivers were able to see the attractions for themselves on a guided tour of the city, with plenty of time for sightseeing. It seems fitting that the ever-expanding GT1 calendar should visit one of the world's fastest expanding cities, as it makes its first visit to China. With both cars on the podium at Paul Ricard, the young drivers team will be looking to repeat that feat this weekend. And to help them on their way, the number 7 car of Thomas Enger and Alex Müller will be sporting the famous Golf livery. In contrast, the Hexis Racing squad haven't been on the podium since round 4 at the Sachsenring, but Clivio Piccioni is hoping to change that this weekend.
Well, we're looking forward to this race, and of course Ordos is a very important weekend for us. Looks like a challenging track, and we're hoping to do a great result and hopefully be on the top step.
As in France, there will be 2 Exim Bank China Corvettes out on circuit in Ordos, with Michael Rossi sharing the 12 car with Sergio Jimenez, whilst Jeroen Den Boer will be in the 11 Corvette, alongside local man Ho Pin Tung.
Very, very excited, of course. Being able to represent the team of your country in your home race here in Ordos is a great opportunity for me and something that makes me really proud. And hopefully we will have a lot of cheering Chinese people on the grandstands for the races.
The Belgian racing team will just be hoping to see Antoine Leclerc and Jan Clery finish the race in Ordos, as the pairing have failed to do so since Silverstone. Christopher Nygaard is joined by Jonathan Hershey as his teammate this weekend in the other Belgian racing Ford GT. Maxime Martin and Fred Makovicky are two of the strongest contenders this weekend in their VDS Racing Ford GT, whilst Bas Linders is confident that he and Marc Henrici can pick up their 6th point finish of the season.
After winning the race in the Blancpain Series with the Marc VDS Racing Team and Maxime Martin, we are really confident that we can also do a good job here in Ordos. Ordos seems to be a quite twisty and bumpy track, which always suits the Ford GT.
Despite losing the lead in the Drivers' Championship at Paul Ricard, Alinkel.com Munich Motorsport still top the team's championship. Marc Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock will be desperate to get back to winning ways, whilst Dominic Schwager and Nicky Pastorelli will be hoping they can repeat the form they had at Navarra. 2 new Lamborghinis will be out this weekend as DKR field Michael Luak and Benjamin Lohenberger in one car, with Christopher Bruck joining Jonathan Kennard in the second www-discount.de machine.
It's fantastic to be given this opportunity, both Mark and the team, and yeah, new circuit, new car to me, and should be a good challenge, but I think the Lamborghini suits the circuit, so we should be okay, I think.
Although he has finished 4th 4 times this season, Enrique Bernaldi is yet to get on the podium. No doubt he and teammate Nicky Katzberg will be pushing to change that in Ordos. The second Sumo Power Nissan GTR will as ever be piloted by Jamie Campbell-Walter and David Brabham, looking for their 3rd podium of the year. Richard Westbrook and Peter Dumbreck will be hoping to pick up as many points as possible in the final 3 rounds, hoping that teammates Michael Crum and Lucas Luhr will become distracted by their championship challenge.
It's a tough challenge now for the last 3 races. We're leading, but not so much, and with the weight, so it's going to be really a little bit complicated, and we have to just keep our cool head. The Nissan GTR runs really well, and I hope there's no exception to Ordos, and we hope to continue to be on the podium.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Ordos International Circuit in China for round 8 of the 2011 FIA GT1 World Championship. We've got the qualifying race coming up for you in a few moments' time, the hour-long race which will decide the grid for tomorrow's championship race. My name is Jack Nichols. We've got Hayley Coxon down in the pit lane, and alongside me in the commentary box for FIA GT1's first visit to China is John Watson. John, it's looking pretty hot out there, 36 degrees the track temperature. We've tended to see it get a little bit cooler at this time of day, but it looks like it's staying pretty good today.
Well, the sun's in the sky, it's almost 27 Celsius, and it is a step into the unknown when the lights go out and the 18 cars make their way down pit straight, the longest part of the racetrack, into turn 1. I hope 18 cars come out the other side. I would never guarantee it, but I'm going to try very hard to do so, and then they go through a sequence of very tight first, second gear corners. In fact, the whole circuit up to turn 18 is very tight and puts a premium on the mechanical grip of the car.
Absolutely. We just saw there the 11 car, which is the Exim Team China car. That's being started by Jerome Denber, but he will then hand over to half Chinese, half Dutchman Ho Pin Tung. There's Enrique Bernaldi. He is starting 4th on the grid in his Sumo Power GT car. And as I said, he's had a number of 4th positions. You can see a gap behind him there on the grid, which is where the number 7 car of Thomas Enger and Alex Muller should be starting, but Alex Muller will be starting from the pit lane. There is Marc Basseng. He is going to be starting 3rd on the grid, so on the 2nd row for who were the championship leaders going into Paul Ricard, but lost the lead at Paul Ricard to Lucas Luhr and Michael Crum, who started down in 7th. There is our pole man, the 41 machine of Frederick Makovicky. It was Maxime Martin who put in the fantastic qualifying lap that saw him take pole position. He's on the front row alongside Peter Dumbreck in the JR Motorsports Nissan, but Maxime Martin, it was a very, very impressive lap to take pole.
Well, we watched the lap. We had a personal best in the first sector, a good time in the middle sector. We didn't think that that potential pole position lap was on, and in fact neither did Richard Westbrook and Peter Dumbreck, who had been holding pole position for almost the entire qualifying, 3rd qualifying, and all of a sudden in that last sector he pulled out 0.2 of a second, which sounds very little, but it meant a great deal, and it allowed that Ford to take pole position for this afternoon's 1-hour qualifying race.
So you thought the 5th will be David Brabham, the 6th place car will be missing. Michael Crum starting in 7th position ahead of David Brabham, who will be starting in 8th place. There you can see the rest of the field coming through. The Corvette of Michael Rossi in 11th position. Stefan Mucker and Darren Turner had a difficult qualifying session. They're down in 13th position. Then we've got the first of the Exim Team China cars, Jerome Dembe in 15th place, and then our two new Lamborghinis this weekend starting at the back of the grid. Christopher Brook will be starting the 48 car. They start at the back of the grid, but they had horrific problems all weekend really, and it came to a head in qualifying where they couldn't flat shift, so Jonathan Kennard was lapping a second and a half slower in qualifying with new tyres than he did in his first lap yesterday. We just saw heading down to the end of the pit lane Alex Muller in the Golf liveried car. There's Richard Westbrook. He's going to be watching how Peter Dumbreck starts from second on the grid. It's going to be a rolling start, and Dumbreck is going to be on the outside for the first corner.
Yes, just keeping an eye on the number 7 Aston Martin in its new Golf livery. Alex Muller was driving the car in the middle section of qualifying, and he said, I was driving harder than I drove on Friday and only had 11 cylinders, and that was the problem. They somewhere lost one of the 12 cylinders in that Aston. They've had to change the engine. They had to take the engine back out again because some of the couplings to bolt the engine up to the water and oil cooling systems didn't marry up, and that's the reason they're not on the grid. They've opted to start from the pit lane, which may be the smart option, bearing in mind 8 or 17 cars plus one barreling into turn 1 for the first time. Track is dirty offline. There's a lot of rubber offline as well, and the racing line into turn 1 is bumpy, so braking will be very critical indeed.
We saw that in the Formula Pilota race, which is the single-seater series we've got supporting the FIA GT1 World Championship this weekend. The driver tried to take a wide line into the first corner, but he got all on the dust on the outside and slid off the circuit. So we are on board looking back from the pole position man, Frederick Makavicki, who is going to be looking to get a decent getaway when the lights turn to green. It's been a decent season so far for Makavicki. He's had a qualifying race win already in Abu Dhabi, but the field now forming up into this final corner, which is going to be, as you said, absolutely crucial today if you want to get a good run on the driver behind you. So are we going to see any confusion because of that missing Golf car? It looks as though they've got themselves sorted out. So the qualifying round, the qualifying race about to get underway. When the lights turn to green, away we go then. And who has got the best getaway? It looks like Makavicki's got a decent start. No, he hasn't, because look at this. Coming up right up behind him is Marc Basseng in the 38 car. We've got one of the Nissans coming up the inside as well. Basseng with a big, big lockup. They are all very, very careful into the first corner. More lockups towards the back, but we're all through the first part of turn 1 safely. We're looking back again from the leader, so it's still as you were. No, Enrique Bernoldi is made up into 3rd position then in that Suma Power GT Nissan as they come into turn 4. Very, very well behaved from all of them. One of the Corvettes trying to get past, I think that might be Lucas Lure that is being overtaken there on the, sorry, Michael Crum starting that car. He loses a place to the first of the Exim Team China cars. There we can see the number 12 car trying to force his way up the inside, and he's been knocked wide, so that's a couple of positions lost. And well, a hectic first few corners, but no dramas.
No, I mean, everybody's more or less got through the first 4 corners. Now they're into this tricky back section of the circuit, turns 9 and 10. There's almost a step between turn 9. You see the cars almost jumping up in the air. Some lose air at the front, some go. There's the Corvette. The front bodywork of that Corvette has completely gone as Fred Makavicki pulls out a small gap coming into turn 11. That's one of the 2 potential overtaking spots around the racetrack. The other, of course, will be at the end of the main straight into turn 1.
Absolutely. So I think we were on board. That's Bas Linders behind us, I believe, as the rear tail of the field make their way through. It's the 48 car of Christopher Brook who is at the back of the field as they descend through the sweeping series of corners and back out onto the start-finish straight once more. A considerable amount of bodywork damage, but it doesn't look much more than bodywork damage on that number 11 car of Jerome Dembe. So whether he pits or not, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, it looks like he's not going to pit, and I would imagine that he'll not get to do very more laps because there'll be a flag. That car is not in a safe condition. You can see bodywork already rubbing on the right front tyre, now under brakes. More of the bodywork, so it's not going very far. In fact, it's going backwards.
Absolutely, and it looks like it could well cause some damage to the car, as you say, John. So here, coming through the left-hander at turn 3, we saw Fred Makavicki had already built up a reasonable margin out the front. There is our race leader. He, as they crossed the line that time, he had a 1.2 second lead. We've got yellow flags. That is the bumper, isn't it?
Yes, it's the front bodywork. I mean, the whole front section, headlights, everything is lying just off the track. Waved yellow flag as the cars come through turn 7. Now they're up into this sequence of turn 8, which leads into turn 9. Ford very smooth through it. They've Nissan behind, bumping more and following the Nissan, the Lamborghini, Nissan, Lamborghini, and then the first of the Corvettes and the first of the Astons for that matter.
Yeah, the Astons didn't get away very well in that. Of course, the highest running Aston was that number 7 car of Alex Muller, and he started, as we've said, from the pit lane. He is still 18th and last at the moment, but he obviously would have lost time starting from the pit lane, so won't be right up on the back. So we are on board with Marc Basseng then, currently running in 4th place, lost a position to Enrique Benoldi off the start. We come down into the long left-hander at turn 15, and then you'll see there's a little right kink, which is 16, which is really going to stop anyone getting up the inside of you unless they're super late on the brakes. Can Basseng start to reel in Enrique Benoldi in front of him?
The difficulty is the Benoldi and the Nissan have got so much squirt out of that low-speed corner, and that was one of the fears that certainly the Ford of Maxime Martin and Fred Makivicki had, was that they get out-dragged just by pure grunt into turn 1, and that's in part enabled Benoldi to get past Marc Basseng in the Lamborghini, so that being knocked back is principally about good acceleration and good track position.
Fred Makivicki was 1 second quicker than the rest of the field on that second lap of the race. A very, very impressive lap time. Into the pits comes Jerome Dember then. Obviously he's been informed to come in. I mean, what are they going to do? Just peel off that bumper at the side? Or because you can't really stick a new one on, can you?
Well, no, they're not get a new one on. They could take it off and send it back out again. I mean, I think the car would be somewhat aerodynamically imbalanced, and the reality is, other than sending him out and getting some more knowledge and allowing Jerome Dember to get some experience of the car, and likewise for Hu Pingtung, who here, the local Chinese driver, not going to get a race. Well, that'll be a huge disappointment to the fans who've made their way out to the circuit.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing they can gamble on, if they can get him out quick enough, we may get a safety car or something like that to bunch the field back up.
It's a mess. Yeah. It's a mess, plain and simple.
And it looks as though Dember might be getting out of the car, which would be a real shame. They're pulling off the, well, trying to pull off the...
Yeah, I mean, you have to say there's not a huge amount of energy or enthusiasm about doing anything about it, and in fact, the message is clear. Your race is over. Get out. We'll have to get this car repaired and get it ready for the championship race on Sunday. It's not going to go any further this afternoon.
No, that is a real shame. So Jerome Dember climbs out of the car.
I mean, he's the tallest driver in the pit lane. It's more like a matter of sort of unwinding himself from the cockpit. There's Hu Pingtung on the left. He's hugely disappointed that he didn't get a run here in the qualifying race to set him up for the championship race tomorrow. There's Hu Ping talking, wishing and hoping it would have been to Jerome Dember.
He's the yellow pages to talk to Jerome Dember.
He's a long way away, yes.
So the up at the front, we've still got Fred Makivicki out in the lead, 2.7 seconds now, his advantage up the front. Then we've got Peter Dumbrek in second, Enrique Benoldi still third, fourth is still Marc Basseng. And then David Brabham is lapping quite quickly in 5th position. He's only half a second away from the man in front of him, as we've still got the waved yellows there now.
Well, until that bit of bodywork is removed, they've got to leave the waved yellow flag out. It's not at a part of the circuit that's going to be of any significant problem. Turn 6, it's a low-speed corner. There's not going to be any overtaking into the corner. I wouldn't expect it. It's going to be further around here on the exit of this tricky and very bumpy turn 10 and the run down. But so far, I've not seen anybody looking seriously. Marc Basseng is coming under pressure from David Brabham. Maybe David Brabham can spring a surprise, as he's just about to try and do.
Yeah, he's looking to the outside of the turn 12 to try and get the better run out of the corner. Now, we've said that it's not really an overtaking opportunity down here unless you're really brave into turn 17 and throw one up the inside. They drop down the hill. John Watson shaking his head. There's no way of getting through.
Not at this point. 7 through 17, if you are particularly either crazy or brave or both, but you need to be right on the gearbox or the rear wing of the car ahead. But it's here on acceleration. The Lamborghini should have slightly better traction off turn 17 because of the configuration of the car. Now the bodywork's been removed, and hopefully we'll see the yellow flag being withdrawn at the exit of turn 6.
Excellent work from our Chinese marshals, who no doubt probably don't have much marshalling experience.
No, they don't, and I mean, they've had a fairly steep learning curve. There have been events here, there have been national events, there's been one international single-seater event last year, but of course it's not like European racing, where there's racing all throughout Europe, virtually every weekend of the certainly the summer season.
So we're continuing to watch the 21 Nissan of David Brabham right up behind the Lamborghini of Marc Basseng in what is the battle for 4th position. I think Basseng will be a little bit frustrated that he's, after qualifying 3rd, is now in danger of dropping down into 5th position. We've got the other ex-Inbank Team China car running pretty strongly. There he is. It's the 12 machine of Michael Rossi at the moment in the battle over 7th position, just ahead of Clivio Piccioni in the first of the Hex's Astons, who had a very disappointing qualifying performance as they bounced their way up the step. And then we've got Michael Crum behind, but David Brabham pretty close now.
Yeah, David Brabham's looking to turn into turn 11 on the inside of the Lamborghini. He's not been able to get quite close enough to do so, but that will be the worry for Mark Pessang, that the acceleration out of turn 10 will favour the Nissan, as we see the Ford now at number 10. It goes back out, having had a pit stop. I wonder was that Antoine Leclerc? I wonder was that the car, but that was the collision between the Corvette and the Ford GT. Antoine Leclerc makes his way back out, in effect now running last. Alex Muller, who did start from the pit lane, up to 16th. Let's look at the start again. Yeah,
so it was a big lockup from Pessang. Where does Bernaldi get through? Because he doesn't get through there. The rest of the field were all pretty well behaved. I think it was kind of turn 4 and 5.
He got up the inside into turn 2.
Yeah.
So that was once he got the car planted up the inside. Now here's where is this where the damage came to the Corvette?
Yeah, I think it must be.
Or elsewhere, we don't know.
Oh no, this is the 12 car, isn't it?
That's the other car,
the 12 car forcing his way up the inside and then dropping back towards Hershey. But this is a great onboard action, and it really brings us right into the action. Look at that, very, very close to going up the exhaust pipe of one of the Hex's Aston Martins there and sending one up the inside. That's a British touring car groove, isn't it?
That worked. That was a good, brave, but out of turn 6, so we didn't expect to see much overtaking there. In the meantime, Fred Makiewicz leading in the car, got an advantage of over 3 seconds from second place of Peter Dumbrek and the Westbrook car. And again, the harrowing from the Nissan runs slightly wide there, gets a little bit.
And Piccioni away a little bit now and is looking fairly comfortable. How quickly can Michael Crum now get onto the back, as we've got the other Aston Martin of Stefan Mucker. He is climbing up the order a little bit after their disappointing qualifying. He qualified in 13th, he's now up to 10th, but he's run a little bit wide there. That could put him under a little bit of pressure from Jonathan Hershey as we go on board in the number 4 Hex. Is just a little bit further back, who's got a grandstand seat of this.
Yeah, but look at the Aston Martin. It's getting absolutely mullered by one of the Belgian 4GTs, by the BDS 4GT, and clearly the third of those cars, the silver 4GT, is the quicker of Jonathan Hershey in that car, trying everything he can to put the... Oh, he goes up the inside in turn. It's the first time we've seen anybody this weekend, and there is contact, and naturally there's bodywork, and also it allows the Hex's Aston Martin to get ahead of the Stefan Mucker car. And Stefan Mucker, of course, we've seen in previous rounds getting into trouble, but that was a brave, courageous, and maybe very risky move as the Hex's Aston tries to get a move on the Ford into turn 1.
So Piccini now in the number 4 Hexes. He's going to get the cut back as well into turn 2. So that's 2 positions made up for the Pacini Hexas Aston Martin in as many corners. Great racing is not over yet. Look, where's he come from?
No, he can't do that. He's got to drop back. He drove up the inside of turn 10.
Bas Linders.
And what Baz is doing, he's going to have to drop back. He cannot hold that position. He must move over and let those cars get through.
Oh, the Ford is trying to get back up the inside once again. This is brilliant racing. Hershey forcing his way back past the Aston. Surely we will see Bas Linders move over because he just drove past them off the circuit.
He just took the shortcut, and there are humps built into the racetrack to preclude anybody from doing that. We're not the only people who have been watching that little move, so we wait to see whether there will be any comment from the stewards regarding that Ford GT driven by Bas Linders, car number 40.
So all that means that Andrea Pacini has found his way into, I think, 10th position now. So he is the first car in this queue. Then we've got Bas Linders, but surely he's not going to be there for much longer. And we've got Stefan Mucker, and he's coming under quite a bit of pressure from Jonathan Hershey now as they descend the hill. We saw that overtake then into the turn 17 hairpin. We weren't sure whether it could be done or not.
And I'll tell you what, Bas Linders is not thinking about making a pit stop because he's working the back of the car just ahead of him all the way. There we see the rear view of the Ford, looking at the Ford GT from behind. Now, is Bas Linders going to concede ground, which he must do?
There's no two ways about it, really, is there? He just drove over the runoff and overtook. So we're looking back to this battle with on board we go now with David Brabham. He's in the Lamborghini Sandwich. He's behind Marc Basseng and in front of Dominik Schwager. Both of them in the Alinkel.com Munich Motorsport team, who still lead the team's championship coming into this weekend, although Lucas Luhr and Michael Crum are at the top of the Drivers' Championship. Brabham, though, he's been this close for a number of laps now. Just can't find
down the inside in turn 6. Good move by David Brabham. Got down, forced the Lamborghini wide, and Marc Basseng will not be happy about that, but that was a fair move. There was minor contact, but in a circuit like this where there's so little room to maneuver, you've got to say, well, that was about as fair as you can get. Any more than that, you'd say, well, he took advantage and it was an avoidable incident. So the two Lamborghinis now running, and will it be Dominik Schwager or Marc Basseng who will lead these two cars at the end of this lap? Because I think it's Marc Basseng who's struggling, and that's the reason why David Brabham could find a way through. And I no doubt that Dominik Schwager will also want to make the move on his fellow teammate, but maybe not making contact in the process.
Absolutely. Brabham certainly caught me by surprise. I was looking at you because I wasn't expecting a move into turn 7.
You can see that coming about 3 corners ago.
Well, this is why you're a racing driver, and I just shout about it. So down into the final sequence of corners, we've still got then the 38 Lamborghini of Marc Basseng, closely followed by Schwager.
But watch to see whether the team play the team game and allow the quicker of the two cars, which is the second, I think, of these two Lamborghinis, to get the advantage. In other words, to take the heat off the Schwager car coming from behind from the Hexas Aston Martin. But no, Marc Basseng is deciding, well, is he sort of opens the door and says, well, I'll let you come through, but not quite sufficient. The message wasn't clear enough, but it is obvious that Marc Basseng hasn't got the performance to maintain the fight to the Nissan, which is just pulling away. David Brabham pulling away comfortably by virtually a second a lap.
And they do need to work together because Clivio Piccioni is right up behind, and so this battling has allowed the Hexas Aston to get right in on this scrap. So it's a three-way battle. Surely the Alinkel.com cars will kind of have a little work together.
The trouble is you've got the team boss, Marc Basseng, leading the employed professional driver in the second car. Now, I don't know what way they work out between themselves within the team, whether there'll be information going backwards and forwards to the pit to convey the information to Marc Basseng that Dominik Schwager actually is quicker, and let him go. And now see the Aston Martin headlights flashing, trying to Clivio Piccioni distract the second of those two Lamborghinis of Dominik Schwager.
So they turn their way through turns 12 and 13. This is the battle for 5th position now that David Brabham has got into 4th and just scampered on off the road. There he is, already dropping down towards turn 16. It's been a massive advantage, but now Piccioni is closer to Schwager than Schwager is to Basseng. So into the final corner they come, a wider line taken. That's going to allow the Aston Martin to get a better run out of the corner. He's going to be right in the slipstream now. Across the start-finish line they go. And is he going to get enough of a tow down this start-finish straight? Turn 1 is an overtaking opportunity, but it's not quite close enough.
Not close enough, but it's an indication that Clivio Piccioni is lining up. And again, we've got Marc Basseng holding off his teammate and in effect holding up his teammate, which is putting him under pressure from Clivio Piccioni. Piccioni right on the rear of the Lamborghini. It's not the gearbox he's on the rear of in the Lamborghini, it's the engine, because the gearbox in the Lamborghini actually is ahead of the engine. It's one of the strange configurations that Lamborghini had. This car, of course, in its production form is a four-wheel drive car. In the race form, it's a two-wheel drive car.
So, through the right-hander at turn 6, up towards turn 7, across the end of sector 1. That's what that white line is across the circuit. Piccioni looking like he's got a fairly decent run out of there. I don't think the chicane is a real overtaking opportunity unless you're very, very brave, because it's very narrow as well, but it's an opportunity to get some air, that's for sure, as they head out towards turn 11.
Yeah, the key out of turn 10 is good, clean exit. Don't run too wide, don't catch the dirt on the outside of the circuit. And, well, Marc Bassang seems to have almost demotivated because we're now seeing that whole train of 3 cars slowing down to the pace of Marc Bassang. As look at that, Clivio Piccioni, very ambitious, looking to go down the inside into turn 14. Not possible, the track isn't effectively wide enough with the racing line. So Clivio Piccioni coming up now to turn 16 into 17, dives down the inside, gets it alongside, and again, you know, you could see it coming.
Yeah, I saw that one coming, that's for sure. So out onto the start-finish straight they come. Clivio Piccioni moving up into 6th place, but for how long? Because there's a very concerned looking...
Marcus Winkelhock's, you're absolutely, I don't believe what I've just seen. Now we're seeing Dominic Schwager coming back around the outside, gets a better run off the corner, but gets onto the dirty outside of the corner, has to concede. And I think you're seeing a very, very unhappy Dominic Schwager. He didn't think that was a fair and reasonable pass into turn 17. Nicky Pastorelli, teammate of Dominic Schwager, he's sitting there seething. You can see the anger in his face.
Absolutely. There's the replay then. It was that late move up into turn 17. Was it all started because he brakes earlier?
No, no, that's all because Marc Bassang braked so early, and then Dominic Schwager followed suit. And Clivio Piccioni saw the deal, said, I don't have to think about it, I'm going to do it. If I'm going to have contact, well, there, so it may be, so it may.
So, there is Piccioni. You can see the damage on the left-hand side of the car. How quickly can he now catch up to Marc Bassang in front in the 38 car? Across the runoff there, that's Michael Rossi taking a little shortcut, and now he's found himself in the grass, spins back almost in front of the circuit, doesn't quite lose it. Michael Crum diving up the inside now as they come down into turn 11. Through he goes. Is there enough room? Rossi's going to have the inside line for the right-hander at turn 12, and he holds onto the position, but Crum has got the cutback once again. That's not an overtaking opportunity into 14. Brilliant racing.
But the problem for the Corvette is that it's got its tires all dirty by doing the run wide. That's why Michael Crum got the run on, but he couldn't get sufficient position to make it stick. Now he's having to deal with pressure coming from behind, and the Corvette's running away. It's the second of the Hexas Aston Martins.
It certainly is. It's the number 4 machine of Andrea Piccini, who is going to be putting Michael Crum under pressure as soon as he gets the earliest opportunity. And then it's Bas Leinders behind, so we didn't actually see Bas Leinders relinquish those positions from earlier on. But anyway, here comes the look towards the inside from Andrea Piccini. Not close enough into turn 1 this time around, but Michael Crum, from being on the attack, all of a sudden has to go on the defence in this battle over 9th position. And it all stemmed really from Rossi running wide, back them all into each other.
Of course, remember that the Crum Lucas Lucar is carrying a substantial success penalty. I mean, it's a lot of weight, and that has a significant bearing on just how you can use your car, but in particular your tires, your brakes, and he doesn't have all the options that you might imagine. That Peter Dumbreck running still in 2nd place, but now just under 3 seconds behind the leading 4 GT of Fred Makovicky.
On board we go with Andrea Piccini, looking back at running very wide. There was Bas Leinders. That's going to lose him a lot of speed, as you saw. They were warned not to go too far over because it can do damage to your tyres.
I wonder if there's been no comment about that move Bas Leinders made when he came through turn 2 into turn 3, shot across the inside of the corner, picked up position. We have not yet been advised on screen that there's a penalty for that, and I wonder why not. I mean, ordinarily, when you gain an advantage by shortcutting a corner, there's a penalty that will be almost automatically served. Still waiting for the information on screen.
Yeah, it could be there. You know, there's some debate as to what the penalty should be because it was such a clear advantage gain. But anyway, these 4 or 5 cars drop down now. Marc Bassang has been caught by the number 3 Hexas Aston of Clivio Piccioni. Out onto the start-finish straight they come. And Piccioni, I was expecting him really to to bring Dominic Schwager with him, but he hasn't. Now the two Nissans have closed up as well, actually. Brabham was looking...
well, he's just gone gangbusters once he's got clear of Mark Bessang, and he's run down the third place car, or third place.
He was third place, wasn't he, Benoldi? And now
Benoldi's dropped back. So these two Nissans have been literally, David Brabham's doing a fantastic job. Last lap time for David Brabham was a 141. The lead car's doing 140s, but Benoldi had a 42. That was the reason.
Yeah,
that was the time loss in the overtake.
Yeah. So I think this will be Brabham's first lap in clear air, so we'll see what kind of lap times he can pull out. He is some 13 seconds off the lead at the moment, but we return to this battle for 5th position. Well, we did for a moment. Here it comes now, up towards the chicane, up towards the little jump that we've got built into this circuit. Look at that, the Lambo, all 4 wheels off the circuit. Then this following train of Michael Rossi ahead of Michael Crum, and then a little bit sideways from Andrea Piccini, but nothing too dramatic at the moment. But this is a nice little train we've got going on here, which I think will start to get a little bit exciting shortly, because although it is a fairly long distance race, you know, it's not Le Mans 24, there's still an urgency to get past.
Very much so, and of course it's all conditional. This will determine your start positions. Clivio Piccioni made a very bold move up the inside into turn 17. He's not going to try it again. No, it's been defended very well by Mark Bessang, but he's aware of the Aston. The Aston right now, and again under the rear wing of the Lamborghini, is V12 power versus V12 power. The Aston very slippery, really, that car designed to run at Le Mans. It is not a sprint car in the sense that others are around. Lights flashing, trying to distract Mark Bessang, and has to come back from the dirty part of the track. Now the tyres on the Lamborghini are going to be slightly dirtier than those than on the Aston, but no advantage to Mark Bessang.
And here comes Dominic Schwager as well, so he has now been brought back into the scrap.
To the right, you can see there was very slight damage to the right front of that car, and I suspect it would manage that Nicky Pastorelli is going to get into that car very shortly. The pit stop window will open in 40 seconds from now, and maybe the Dominic Schwager car will be one of the very early visitors to the pit lane.
Possibly, or even Mark Bessang, in fact, to try and put a Marcus Winkelhock in there, who by rights is possibly the quicker driver of the two. So we'll see how the pit stop strategies pan out.
20 seconds to go. Yeah, they'll get round. They'll be on the pit straight after the 20 seconds has disappeared. So at the earliest opportunity, driver changes and tyre changes.
So this order still unchanged, but now the Stefan Mucker is now getting involved in that battle as well. Here is our race leader. We've hardly seen anything of Fred Makovicky. Such has been his dominance. He's got a 3-second advantage at the front of the field, so there's no point bringing him in when he's, you know, the class of the field at the moment.
Well, it's the judgment the team make. Do you bring your driver in at the earliest opportunity? It depends a little bit, as usual, as where you'd filter back in. But now we see the pit window is open, and no doubt some of the cars that we saw with drivers preparing will be in there as one of the Nissans dives in.
So David Brabham comes across the line in 3rd place to be the fastest man on the circuit last time around. Enrique Benoldi is in the pits, but Brabham lapped 0.3 of a second quicker. We've also got Michael Rossi diving into the pits. We've also got Michael Crum and Stefan Mucker, so it's about to get very, very busy down there in the pit lane, and how these guys pan out will be very, very interesting. So we have got the 38 car of Mark Bessang in there, and he's going to hand over to Marcus Winkelhock in the Allinkel.com Munich Motorsport car. There goes Michael Crum down the pit lane as well. So a good pit stop time is about 21-22 seconds, really. That's the time you want to be stationary for. And away goes the 20 car, which was Enrique Benoldi, but he hands over to Nicky Katzberg. Out goes Marcus Winkelhock as well. It's going to take a couple of laps for us to really figure out what's happened.
Yes, it'll be about 5 laps before the whole thing cycles through. As you see 23 there, Lucas Luhr taking over from Michael Crum. And key now is to make the driver changes quicker than the tyre change, and that requires a lot of slick teamwork. Not the best stop here for this car. It's very slow.
He was ahead of these guys coming out of the pits
that's
now.
That's a poor pit stop. Maybe a problem with one of the wheels or the wheel gun. As we see that Lucas Luhr car, and that's disappointment for the championship leaders. They had a 14-point advantage over Marcus Winkelhock and Mark Bessing coming into this race. The leading forward now dives in. Maxime Martin will take over from Fred Makovicky, and the 2nd place car from Peter Dumbreck with Richard Westbrook ready to get in.
Yep, so there is Maxime Martin, who pulled out that stonker of a qualifying lap. He's getting ready to take over, and they'll try and get as quick a pit stop as possible. It's quite slippery in the pit lane as well. That's something they've got to be careful of. But out after a brilliant first stint comes Fred Makovic. Here is, that's not Lauren Crum, that's, yeah, the little drop there of the wheel gun, wasn't there? So
something dropped down out of the look, you can see it, I know it's a radio, I think it's a radio in fact. So it's just pulled out of his belt and it's swinging around like a...
So there's Richard Westbrook getting changed.
So the Westbrook pit stop is going to be compromised by that radio getting in the way. But he's off, and whether the gap at 2.7 seconds between first and second, that was the gap, whether it will be any more or less, it looks roughly about status quo, maybe a fraction of advantage to the Nissan, but certainly not much difference between the 2.7 as they came into the pits.
So there we have the 20 machine, which is now being driven by Nicky Katzberg. Fingers crossed, says Michael Crum as he heads over to the pit wall to find out what's going on. There is, as I say, Nicky Katzberg. Where then has Brabham filtered out in all of that? Has he made his pit stop yet? Just trying to look up on the timing screen. No, he hasn't. I don't think he's made his pit stop yet.
So Brabham is actually the lead car, but give it 5 laps. By the time all this filters its way through, in effect, it should be Maxime Martin leading, followed by the Dumbrek Westbrook car with Richard Westbrook behind the wheel of it.
Yeah, so out of the pits goes 48, Jonathan Kennard. He takes over. You can see an interview with Jonathan on the GT1world.com website, where you can also see an on-board lap of this Ordos circuit, voiced by our very own John Watson. If you are having trouble getting your head around exactly where the circuit goes, that was certainly our challenge on Thursday and Friday, actually figuring out where the corners went. Into the pits then comes the 21 car that we've been waiting for, David Brabham. Jamie Campbell-Walter getting ready to take over now. I don't think Brabham was 10 seconds off second place, so unless it's an amazing pit stop, I don't think he's going to be making the move for second, but that's got to be his aim, to try and catch up.
Well, we saw the pit stop with the one of the Nissans where the radio from the tyre changer popped out, distraction no doubt caused a loss of time. This is a much better pit stop. Jamie Campbell-Walter, get the thing running, Jamie, for goodness sake. Sitting there, I think he was thinking about a Sunday afternoon roast or something.
So there were our 2 race leaders, and I think that GT might be one of the ones that's a lap down. But anyway, there's the car that was piloted by Enrique Bernoldi, but is now Nicky Katzberg, and Jamie Campbell-Walter has come out in front. So I think he's in a net 3rd position overall as we go on board with Andrea Piccini. No, he's handed over. He's coming out of the pit, so it's Christian Hohenadel coming out of the pit lane, and he has come out just behind Darren Turner, I think.
So we have to see now what Darren Turner can do. Stefan Mucke was in the car for the first stint. Darren Turner's taken over. Didn't have a great deal of success in qualifying. They struggled with balance and grip and all the usual issues, hoping for a better race as we see the race leader, and the gap clearly is less than 2.7 seconds. So Maxime Martin behind the wheel of the 4GT, Richard Westbrook behind the wheel of the Nissan GTR, and this is going to be a battle between 2 mighty good drivers.
Yeah, this is going to be very, very interesting indeed. I would suggest the 2 of them very close in qualifying. Both of them could have gone quicker than they actually managed in the final Q3 session. Westbrook was setting purple sectors, but complained his rear tyres had gone off. Here we've got Jamie Campbell-Walter. After pit stopping later, his tyres are not quite up to the temperature yet compared to Nicky Katzberg. So these 2 Sumo Power GT cars could be starting to battle each other in a minute. I think this is going to be over about 7th position when pit stops finally sort themselves out. It's 2 purple sectors in the 1st and 2nd sector for Richard Westbrook, so he's on a charge at the moment.
And Nicky Katzberg is going to have to make his best shot now down at the end of the straight into turn 1, but he's not close enough to the tail of Jamie Campbell-Walter. Jamie Campbell-Walter's got those tyres up to racing temperature, and he's going defensive, staying in the middle of the track now, moving back to the left. He's entitled to do that as long as it's not an aggressive move. So Jamie Campbell-Walter has contained his younger Dutch teammate.
Absolutely. So through the left-hander they come, and then into the even longer left-hander, which really puts a strain on the front right tyres here. We go back on board with Nicky Katzberg ever so slightly closing in. That could just be partially the concertina effect that you always get under braking, but through this tight twisty stuff he's taking a wider line in to try and get a better run out of the corner. And his next real opportunity is going to be in turn 11 if he can force Jamie Campbell-Walter perhaps into a mistake up here at the step at turn 9 and 10. but it looks as though, oh, that
ran
was close,
wide.
yeah.
He ran it wide out of turn 8 and could have paid the penalty. So the gap now fractionally opening. Enrique Benoldi talking to Geraldo Rodriguez, used to be the team, not the team manager, the driver manager of Rubens Barrichello. Came in with Enrique Benoldi, the Brazilians, you know, Brazilians at racetracks
together, don't
stay
they? Yeah.
together.
Absolutely, they stay together and do British Formula 3. That's basically the Brazilian motorsport motto. So we go back on board with Nicky Katzberg, who you would say now Jamie Campbell-Walter has got his tyres up to temperature,
Yeah.
just pulling away a bit now.
Yeah, he's got slight advantage. The one lap pressure tyre, he's now got the benefit of that. Nicky Katzberg had an opportunity at the end of the first flying lap, and that was defended by Campbell-Walter. As we see one of these two.
Well, we've already seen Kennard in the pits, and so they're not doing a driver change. So, but presumably there was a problem or something like that. The guy behind the 47 car of Manuel Lauck is handing over now to Benjamin Laumberger. So they are the last of our pit stoppers. So at the end of this lap now that Maxime Martin is on, we will get a true rundown of the order and we'll bring that to you. But Richard Westbrook only 1.6 seconds behind at the end of that last lap. Martin was 0.6 of a second quicker.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you can see the gap has opened marginally on that 1.6 seconds. It'll probably be closer to 1.8 or 1.9, assuming that they maintain the gap as they come up to complete yet another lap. We've got 26 minutes or so of this race remaining, and Richard Westbrook, who knows the car particularly well, knows what it's capable of, could have had pole position, but he abandoned a lap when he had a fastest sector with about a minute to go, and Maxime Martin got the advantage.
Yeah, Martin pounced in the very final seconds of qualifying. In fact, he was the only guy to still be out on track when the clock ticked down to 0.
Interesting, fastest race lap on the last lap, lap 19, has gone to Maxime Martin, 1 minute 39.068, which is a fairly good effort considering that pole position was a 138.5, so just under half a second approximately from the pole lap in race configuration. Okay, fresh tyres, but more fuel than you would normally run in qualifying. And Richard Westbrook, the gap, it's still showing 1.637 as opposed to 1.601, so it looks more initially than it does than it did initially.
Absolutely, I think Westbrook kind of matched him on that last lap. So as they come across the line, Maxime Martin leads, Richard Westbrook in second, Jamie Campbell-Walter in third place, fourth now is Nicky Katzberg, and then I think we've got the number 3 car, haven't we? Yeah, Steph Dusseldorp is in 5th position with Marcus Winkelhock in 6th. The Schwager has now handed over to the 37 car of Nicky Pastorelli. Darren Turner in 8th, Hohen Ardel in 9th. And Sergio Jimenez completing the top 10 at the moment with just under 25 minutes remaining. We've completed 20 laps around this 3.7 kilometre Ordos circuit, and it's provided some good racing so far. There's been some good overtaking opportunities.
Absolutely, the nature of the racetrack is such, you're going to get a lot of bunching, and you're going to get a few do-or-die efforts down the inside. Maybe somebody will take the long route round. I want to see now, can Darren Turner in the Aston Martin number 8, can he do anything with Nicky Pastorelli in the Lamborghini just ahead? So the battle that's going on for 7th place. Remember, points scores only go down to 6th place in the qualifying race. 8 points for a win, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. So everybody will be trying to take advantage of the fact that the Kroom Lure car is really in a difficult position, 14th place, whatever the problem was.
But they had that long pit stop, didn't they?
That long pit stop, we never found out whether it was a wheel or a nut or a bit of everything. But down in 14th position, yes, 14th position, and way out of the points, and they're not going to make any improvement.
So on board we go with Christian Hohen Ardel. He turns into the final right-hander on the circuit at turn 17, then he's behind Darren Turner, who in turn is behind Nicky Pastorelli. I was expecting Pastorelli to perhaps go a little bit quicker than this, but Darren Turner has got in the car and started doing a good job in that Aston Martin. Pastorelli, as they came across the line that time, has a 0.8 of a second advantage in that 7th position. But if anything, Darren Turner now coming under a lot of pressure from the number 4 Hexis Racing Aston Martin, driven at the moment by Christian Hohen Ardel. We go on board with Hohen Ardel into the long left-hander at turn 4, which then becomes turn 5. It's kind of one corner really. It's given 2 names.
You make 2 apexes, but the key is to put yourself in a good position to take turn 6 and get advantage of it. But it's such a short sprint, it's all about acceleration, then on the brakes into turn 7, and from here through turn 8, nothing you can do. It would take an error from the car ahead of you to give you an advantage. Up into turn 9, then you jump literally and physically off the ground. Then through 10, keep it neat and tidy. And well, if you're in a shot to move down the inside into turn 11, but even as close as these two Aston Martins are, there's no chance at all.
So at the moment we've got Christian Hohenadel and Andrea Piccini sitting outside of the points. They're third in the championship. Mark Basseng and Marcus Winkelhock are currently sixth, so they'll pick up 1 point in the championship. Yeah. And Michael Crum and Lucas Löhr aren't going to pick up any points in the championship.
So the championship lead was 14 going into this race between the Nissan of Löhr and Crum and Basseng and Winkelhock. Should the Winkelhock car currently sixth finish in sixth, the gap will be down by only 1 point. So in relative terms, it could be a lot worse. But it's a disappointment because the position that Löhr and Crum currently are running in 14th will not do them any favours for the championship race on Sunday.
No, absolutely. It's not a particularly good weekend so far for them. They started, where did they start on the grid? It was all the way down in 8th position, but then they've dropped back subsequently since then. So Löhr and Crum just struggling a little bit. Sorry, 7th position, I should say, which ultimately became 6th with the Aston starting from the pit lane. So from 6th to drop to 14th, it's a very, very difficult afternoon.
It is. It's I think disappointing would be the understatement of the afternoon. In the meantime, Hohenadel keeping their eye out on the other Aston. There we go, back to the two lead cars. The gap's opened up fractionally to 1.8 seconds. You can see that Martin's taken a thousandth or so out of the Nissan over the previous 2 laps. But it's such a little difference, 1.8, 1.6 seconds. But it's going in the favour of the Ford.
So, do we have enough time? Does Richard Westbrook have the pace to catch up with our race leader? Let's have a little talk to Peter Dumbreck, who was in that car, before handing over to Richard Westbrook.
Peter, we just saw your movements being rather animated. Do you have any issues?
No, the car's good. I just, I wanted to make sure we've covered absolutely everything. I wanted to tell the engineer to remind him about the brake balance, but the car is running perfectly, so fingers crossed we'll keep this result.
Can you take it from the Ford? Can you take it from the Ford?
Sorry, I missed it.
Can you take the lead from the Ford?
Will be very difficult, you know. They're nip and tuck. I think he's just got the legs over us. We need to look at setup for tomorrow, but we're very close, you know. And it's nice, we have a nice gap to the other cars. So fingers crossed for a good result.
Thank you.
Well, Richard Westbrook, they say they're going to settle for second place. He's not, is he?
No, Richard's gone aggressive. He took the best part of half a second out in one of the, I think, the lap before last. So the gap as they came across the line in lap 23 was 1.3 seconds, and Richard right now is lasering in on the rear of the Ford, trying to pick up momentum again and put the Ford under pressure to make Maxime Martin push harder, put more load onto the car. Of course, in doing so, you're doing the same to your car. But you saw, I mean, Richard coming through the turn 9 and 10, he was most aggressive in cutting inside the corner on the limit of what probably would be seen as acceptable to just try and find another. Here we go. This is up into turn 9, over the step. Now watch the Nissan following behind. He cuts across the inside over the rumble strips and tries to shave another thousandth or maybe 100th of a second off the gap between first and second.
Absolutely, the gap is 1.4 seconds as they cross the line that time. It's really ebbing and flowing really between 1.3 and 1.6 up at the front. I mean, there's not a massive amount for Westbrook to gain because it's only going to be 2 points. But pole position could be crucial.
I think that's the key, that they can start the race with their car on pole position. It is an advantage. It's a psychological also benefit to the team. And here we see now what's going on further down the field. The Aston Martin and the second of the JMR Motorsports cars driven by Lucas Löhr. That's running in still 14th position, but maybe looking at 13th. Again, no advantage in terms of points scoring, but nonetheless, 1 position higher on the grid is always very welcome. And Thomas Enger now behind the wheel of the Aston.
Yeah, and if he starts 13th on the grid, he'll have the inside line for turn 1, which is always a helpful place to be. Of course, Thomas Enger started from the pit lane. Is this a look up the inside? That's going to be a little bit close. Surely Enger can hang on around the outside. No, he can't.
He wasn't interested. Thomas Enger didn't do anything there to defend. He decided, I'm not going to make an issue. I don't want to damage my car. We've got a brand or a fresh engine, whichever, in the car, whether I start 13th or 14th. He may also have a problem at the pace he's running at right now. It was a no-brainer that Lucas Luhr was going to get through, and there was a fair bit of cooperation from I've lost my thoughts. From Lucas Luhr.
Lucas Luhr, yeah. So we go back on board with Christian Hohenadel still running in that 9th position, just behind Darren Turner. On that previous lap, Hohenadel did a 1 minute 40.7, a tenth of a second slower than Turner. Only 7/10 of a second between them though, and it's been around that for a little bit of time. Looks like it might be a little bit more as they turn down through turn 14. May possibly have just extended a little bit on this lap. Jamie Campbell-Walter sets his fastest lap of the race the previous time around, running in 3rd place. But that's a good point that Peter Dumbreck made a minute ago. 2nd place man Richard Westbrook, he's got 22 seconds back to 3rd place. So there's no pressure at all from behind.
No, there's not. There's a race between these two cars for the lead, and the 3rd place Nissan of Jamie Campbell-Walter, as you say, sufficiently far behind not to be an issue. It's a matter of pride. If you're a racing driver, you race to win. You don't necessarily want to drive to consolidate, and Richard Westbrook will not want to consolidate. He'll want to pressurize as much as he can within his own limits. The Ford that's leading this race, the gap up to 1.7 seconds it was, lower than that down to 1.3 a couple of laps ago. And when you're pushing so hard, we saw Richard pushing very hard through turns 9 and 10, you do a lot of hard work on your car. You might need to let it breathe for a lap or two, give the tyres and the brakes that moment to recover.
So Maxime Martin leading the way with 16 minutes remaining here at the Ordos International Circuit. He's looking for his 2nd championship race victory of the season. As we look back, now the gap visible back to Richard Westbrook. It looks like it's extended. No, it's still 1.7 seconds. So Martin, as I say, looking for his 2nd championship race win of the season after he picked one up at the Saxon Ring. This, of course, is the qualifying race, though, of course, which he won in Abu Dhabi. So he won the very first race of the season, but it hasn't quite come together for the team this year, even though they've usually had the pace.
Yeah, and it's certainly Maxime Martin and Fred Makivicki have been a very combative and competitive, balanced driver lineup. But the Ford GT, it's a supercar, but not on every circuit.
So out of the corner, up towards turn 5. Let's go down to Haley in the pit lane. She is with Alex Muller.
Alex, are you happy the way the Aston Martin is now performing?
Yeah, we got back our engine. We got back our performance. We changed the engine. Thanks to the boys, they did it like in 1.5 hours, the engine change. We missed it like by 15 seconds to get out of the pit lane to the starting grid. So now Thomas stuck in traffic, but the car is fine.
Thank you.
But you can see, I mean, he's struggling in turn 1. The car was running wide on the exit. Whether that's, again, I don't think Thomas is doing the normal Thomas Enger thing, which is driving the wheels off the car. And I don't think he's capable of doing it. I don't think he's got the car right now to do it with. There was an easy pass from Lucas Luhr a few laps ago on number 7, the Gulf Aston Martin. So Thomas sitting there and running around, lapping roughly, well, middle 1 minute 41, the same lap time as Lucas Luhr in the Nissan that just overtook him a minute or so ago.
I fear we saw 2 pit stops for Jonathan Kennard and Christopher Brook, and they are in the pits again, and it looks like they have been for a lap or 2 now. So maybe Haley can go and find out what happened, but it looks as though still troubles with that Lamborghini.
Yeah, they had troubles in qualifying, they had troubles in practice. Engine was down on power for some strange reason and sat out Friday's practice, and they also had a gearbox problem which delayed them significantly. Only 4 laps in the 2nd free practice on Friday afternoon. So it's really on the back foot for the 2nd of these 2 returnee Lamborghinis.
So it's worth making a point, because these 2 Lamborghinis we saw battling earlier on, the 37 and 38 car, and their battling allowed the number 3 Aston Martin to get involved, and as a result, Steph Dusseldorf, when he took over, he is now in 5th position, some 5.5 seconds off the road, and I would venture if they'd have, you know, played the team game a little bit, Duffelsdorf wouldn't be there.
Well, I think that's one of the issues when you got the boss is also the driver of one of the two cars. So it's a slightly unusual scenario where you have the boss of a team is actually, whether he's the lead or however they determine the drivers within each of the two cars. But certainly he did hold up the Dominic Schweiger car, and that allowed the other Aston to come into play. And maybe the pit lane should have played a bigger part in the judgment as to who should gain the advantage between those two Lamborghinis.
Absolutely. So there is the 21 car. Jamie Campbell-Walter still running in 3rd position. He's 4 seconds ahead of Nicky Katzberg behind him, and quite a way behind Richard Westbrook behind. And you can see that he has been pulling away from Nicky Katzberg in recent laps. We saw the two of them battling as soon as they came out the pits, but Campbell-Walter's got into the rhythm, he's got into the flow, and he's pulling away.
Yeah, I mean, the out lap for any car is always going to be its most vulnerable. But once you get through that first lap, you get the tyre, and also because there's a driver change, the driver also gets accustomed to the feel of the car, having sat out the first 25 or so minutes in the garage waiting for the driver changes. You just can't turn it on like a light bulb. Some think they can, but they're very rare.
Well, and the track conditions are probably quite different now because it's really
changes.
sunny.
Yeah, I mean, the track temperature clearly will have risen. The ambient temperature, certainly where we're sitting in the commentary booth, feels much warmer as well. And all these things are what you have to factor in, especially the driver who is taking over. He hasn't had the benefit of a nice, gentle outlap from the pits to go to the grid to get some sense of what the differences may be. So it's a tougher role for the driver who takes over after the mandatory pit stop.
So we're watching our 5th place man there, the number 3 Hexis Aston Martin of Steph Dusseldorf. He's really got the easy stint in this one because the man who was in it before, Clivio Piccioni, he did all the battling to make up positions and such. Oh, that's a shame. Thomas Enger in the pits.
Yeah.
Muller was saying, well, we were saying, weren't we, that it didn't look quite right.
The car didn't look like it was. I mean, Thomas Enger wrings the neck of a racing car. He's a great race driver, and Thomas wasn't doing that. He knew he had some issues, and therefore when Lucas Luhr came up behind him, he didn't make a fight of it. He gave the room for the Nissan to go through, although he matched the times of the Nissan, but there was something clearly not working for Thomas Enger and that car, and they've taken it into the pits.
So this is a concertinaing effect for 10th position. We've got Sergio Jimenez at the front of it in his Corvette, then the two Ford GTs. The first is the Belgian racing car of Christopher Nygaard, and then behind is Mark Henrici in the number 40 Mark VDS Racing Ford GT.
Watch down the inside. You could see that Henrici was thinking about it, and he's going to have a look as well. I suspect not close enough to do it into turn 16, but we might see Christopher Nygaard having a look at it, sniffing the back of the Corvette, not liking the fumes, wanting fresh air.
Absolutely, it was a very wide line taken in by Henrici. Is that going to give him a better run over the start finish straight? There we can see Bas Linders.
I'd love to speak to Baz and say, well, what happened when you came out of turn 2 into turn 3? You find a bit of the racetrack that isn't officially racetrack.
And got away with it as well.
He got away with it. I'm amazed.
Into turn 2 they come. And Sergio Jimenez, who took over that car from Michael Rossi, who we saw having some great scraps as well, is trying to hold off Nygaard and Henrici. Of course, Henrici probably a little bit disappointed at the moment, him and Bas Linders, because their teammate is leading the race very, very comfortably. They'd hoped to be a little bit further up the field.
Well, there wasn't a great qualifying for Mark Henrici. In fact, at one point he went off track on the exit of turn 10 and drove through the gravel, did a bit of almost haymaking, and the car did a further 3 laps with straw, grass, blocking the radiators. I dread to think how the water temperatures were.
So on board we go with Sergio Jimenez through the jump. You'll see him keep glancing down to his mirrors and to his bottom right, because there will be a rear view screen in the car with which he can check how close Christopher Nygaard is. But if anything, it's Nygaard who's going to be looking in the mirrors more. He had a little semi-look up the inside in there. That could compromise him.
I think he made a mistake, because it's given Mark Henrici another opportunity to have a look down the inside as they come down the hill into turn 15, and he might look down the inside, might try and get up alongside, has to get out of it and has to almost drive off the racetrack, but there's a potential pass coming up into turn 17.
Yeah, I think that could force Nygaard out of position at one point, which would allow him up the inside. It hasn't worked that time. Sergio Jimenez will be watching this.
And he's actually pulled away as a consequence
Exactly.
of the defence from Christopher Nygaard from the attack of Marc Henrici.
He'll be very happy looking in his rear-view mirror to see these two continuing to battle over what is 11th position. The two of them almost identical lap times, only 0.04 of a second difference between them last time around, whereas Jimenez managed to pull out 0.2 of a second on the pair of them. Very, very close. They dive across the inside, the Bas Linders line almost, as they head down into turns 4 and 5. And he's just lost a little bit of momentum now, the 40 car of Henrici. And as Sergio Jimenez, he hasn't got the pace to hold off these two for very long. I think only if these two keep battling will Jimenez hold on to 10th.
I think you're right, but that's an issue about motor racing. If you've got two guys battling behind a car that actually they should be ahead of, then they're never going to get ahead of it. And all Jimenez has got to do is maintain his line, not make any errors, not be seduced into driving quicker than he needs to do. The Corvette hops, skips and jumps forward slightly better through that 9-10 sequence, pulling gears. Sergio Jimenez did a great job on one of these cars in Brazil at Interlagos, but look at Nygaard looking to dive down the inside. He gets the job done, gets up the inside. Can Henrici follow through, make it a Ford 1-2? Yes, he does.
Brilliant work there. So Marc Henrici making up a position. He moves up into 11th place. So it's Nygaard from Henrici, and Sergio Jimenez drops down the field just a little bit. But this battle still isn't over. Henrici, is he going to be close enough for the look into the final corner? He thought about it, didn't he? A little twitch to the inside, but decided better of it. Out onto the start-finish straight they come, as this battle just calms down a little bit. Marc Henrici.
He was going to be a little bit too greedy if he thought he could make that move stick. He was not far enough up, and the track position was covered by Christopher Nygaard. He didn't let Marc Henrici get an opportunity.
Absolutely. So that's Marc Henrici up into 11th place. Let's hear from his teammate, Bas Linders. He's down with Haley.
Mark, will Mark be able to take Christopher? The last thing he wants to do is take his teammate out.
Yeah, of course, but we really would like this 10th position, because before the pit stop I was in front of the two Astons of Turner and Hoyenadel. We were 8 and 9, so at least the 10th position would be good, because the qualifying was a real disaster, so I hope to get a good result tomorrow.
You seem to take an interesting line at the start of the race, but it looks like you got away with it.
Well, it's very difficult at the start of the race, first of all because the green light comes on before we are around the bend, so we can't actually see it. There's not a lot of incidents at the start, which was good, but then it was a bit looking left and right where to go, and there was not a lot of space. This track is very narrow, and some people touched a little bit, but it's really good that nobody really crashed.
Thank you.
Well, he's got his excuses covered, hasn't he?
I mean, that's a version of an event that I watched, and you at home watched it as well, and I can't quite see the two overlapping.
Absolutely. So we've only got 5 minutes to go in this race. Bas Linders' colleague in the car is Marc Henrici. He's there in 11th place, but our race leader is their teammate Maxime Martin. And Henrici hasn't been able to keep the pace of Christopher Nygaard as they head across the start-finish straight now. This is the battle for 10th place, as I say. Nygaard now holding it. Hohenadel and Darren Turner just up in front. The gap is now up to 2.1 seconds between them, so that battle has calmed down a little bit. Turner in 8th, Hohenadel in 9th position. If anything, it's Steph Dusseldorp and Nicky Kapsberg that may well be closing up in the final few stages of the race, up in the battle for 4th position. But here is our race leader, the 41 car of Maxime Martin. It was an impressive early stint from Fred Makovicky, and Martin really has just taken it from strength to strength.
Yeah, I mean, these two drivers have been effectively the class of this field in the qualifying race, and Richard Westbrook has seesawed between 1.3 and 1.6 seconds, but there's more pressure coming. Look at the back of the Nissan being pressured now by Steph Dusseldorf and Nicky Kapsberg. With 3.5 or 3 minutes 50 seconds remaining, probably the best part of 2 and a bit laps. Corvette's pulled over.
That's a shame. We've already had one of the Exim Bank Team China cars out of the race because of contact earlier on. Great battling going into the final corner. That's going to compromise the Nissan's line. Can the Aston get it? All sorts of wheel spin on the exit. Got a little bit sideways. They're going to be right together as they head over the start-finish line. This is the battle for 4th position and a second row starting slot for tomorrow's championship race. It's the Nissan in front of Nicky Kapsberg. Behind is the number 3 Aston Martin of Steph Dusseldorp. is he darts to the outside line to try and get the better cutback, and that'll maybe put him in good stead for the run down into turn 4 and 5, but that's a one-line corner, so it doesn't matter how wide you go in.
I mean, other than being pig ignorant and forcing your way, I mean, we have seen a bit of that this afternoon in all fairness, but the Aston Martin Stef Dusseldorp isn't close enough at this point, and he doesn't need to be close enough anyway, because there's very little that he's able to do. We see the Corvette just on the exit of turn 6, waved yellow flag indicating no overtaking in that zone, but it isn't essentially an overtaking zone anyway, although we have had 1 or 2 manoeuvres. But up through turn 9, oh, a lock-up from Jamie Campbell-Walter, and that again will play to the strengths of the Aston Martin. Clivio Piccioni is on that one straight away. Yeah. He's picked it up, but unfortunately Stef Dusseldorp didn't manage to run down the Nissan sufficiently into turn 11, but an indication that Jamie Campbell-Walter is under pressure.
Nicky Katzberg in the fourth berth. It's Jamie Campbell-Walter one place further up in the other Sumo GT car, so down into the left-hander at turn 14 they come. Only 2 minutes to go, so our race leader, has he just come across the line? We might have a couple of laps still out of this.
Into the final corner. Struggling for grip.
He read that though, didn't he? Covered the inside line.
Now he's got to deal with the speed of the Aston Martin, which will gain some aerodynamic advantage by being so close. It's a question of whether the grunt of Nissan will outdo the sophisticated B12 of the Aston Martin. Katzberg goes one way to the left to defend, to take the racing line. He actually pulls away from the Aston under sheer horsepower, and unfortunately Stef Dusseldorp can't do much, and again holds the tight inside line, forcing the long way around, frustrating Dusseldorp.
I think that Nissan is struggling with his tyres. You shouldn't be getting out of shape into the entry of such a slow corner.
Through turn 15 up to 16 and 17, he was so defensive. I mean, that's the most defensive I've seen of anybody in this race, and I suspect it's tyre and or brake related.
I guess when you're sitting in an Aston Martin like that, the Nissans must look absolutely huge, because they're quite big cars and wide cars as well, so it probably looks like the widest car on the circuit for...
It's like driving down the motorway following a 43-ton truck.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go then. This is where Katzberg locked up last time on the run-up into the chicane. No such lockups this time. Takes quite a lot of curb on the left-hand kink. We've got 45 seconds remaining, so I'm not 100% sure where Maxime Martin is on the circuit, but he will be starting his final lap fairly soon and defending at every single corner. This is going to be compromised him into turn 13. He's got the cutback, so great racing there, and it moves up into that position. Nicky Katzberg losing out to Stef Dusseldorp. He took that defensive line into 12, and as soon as he did that, you knew what was coming.
Absolutely, I mean, but well thought out by Stef Dusseldorp, because he saw that the Nissan was struggling, but he had to enable, he controlled, in fact, Nicky Katzberg from his car, and that's what racing drivers can do. They can force issues by doing one thing and putting the driver that you're putting under pressure, under even greater pressure.
So out, the yellow flag still waving because of that Team China car, but the 41 car of Maxime Martin really has been maybe not a class of his own today. He's been pegged all the way by Peter Dumbreck and Richard Westbrook, but as he comes into the step for the final time, it's a very comfortable lead that he's got. The Golf Aston a little bit further back is back out, which is good news. He's running a lap or so down though, Thomas Enger, and maybe even more than that, actually possibly about 6 laps down, I think. But for the final time, the 41 car of Maxime Martin turns up through turns 12 and through turns 13, down through the sweeping corner of 14. It was the driver Frederick Makovici who took the start of the race. He held the lead at the first corner, gradually began to pull away. Under a little bit of pressure was Maxime Martin, but the man who drove a superb lap in qualifying to take pole position for this qualifying race is also going to take the win in the qualifying race to claim 8 points and pole position for tomorrow's championship race. It's the win for Maxime Martin in the Mark VDS racing car that he shares with Fred Makovici. Second place for Richard Westbrook. I've no doubt he'll be pleased with that. Thomas Enger comes across the line in the Golf car down in 17th place, so not really a representative performance from him. Then we've got a good 20 seconds or so to wait for third place, which should be Jamie Campbell-Walters, but a brilliant drive from the 41 car this afternoon.
Absolutely, and they did what they had to do. They got the lead at the start. That was key to winning this race. They got ahead of the Nissan they shared the front row of the grid with, and once they got that clear air, they had on average 1.5 seconds advantage throughout the race.
So here comes Stef Dusseldorp across the line, flashing his lights, making that move on the very final corner. We've still got these two Lamborghinis right together. Darren Turner is in there as well, along with Hohenadel was following Darren Turner for most of that race, or most of his stint, I should say. Doesn't quite make it, so Nissan 5th, Lamborghinis in 6th and 7th, Aston Martins in 8th and 9th, and 10th position is going to go the way of Christopher Nygaard, who had that great battle with Mark Henrici, who should come home in 11th place. But we go on board with our race winner, Maxime Martin, and he takes the victory along with Fred Makovic. They'll no doubt be very, very pleased with that performance. As I say, not really having the outright pace that was a lot quicker than everyone else, but just that pole position really was crucial in the end, and that early lead they built up. So an impressive performance.
And interesting, just trying to just do a quick calculations on the championship standings in terms of the drivers. Really little, in fact virtually nothing has changed. Only 1 point lost to the Michael Krum Lucas Lure car. That lead now down to 13 points, but none of the other top 6 in the championship managed to score in this qualifying race, from my quick assessment of the results. And really, I'm surprised. I thought it might have been more than that.
Absolutely, and that'll be more crucial tomorrow in the championship race, where there's more points on offer. Of course, as we've said, these finishing positions will become the grid for tomorrow's championship race, where there's 25 points on offer for the race victory. So tomorrow is when we'll really see the championship positions changing, but today is where we've seen a good indication of who has pace and who doesn't around this circuit. And the Ford GT, very strong. The Nissan's very strong as well. As we've said in qualifying earlier on, when the Nissans arrived, they didn't think they were going to have the pace here.
No, they didn't. They came and saw the circuit and the configuration, which is 18 corners in a relatively small layout, 3.77 kilometers, just over 2.3 miles. They didn't think they're going to be in a position. They had all of their 4 cars in the top 8 in qualifying, and there you see joy from Fred Makovic and Maxime Martin. Richard Westbrook sportingly shakes the hands of both the drivers. They knew they had a good race going, and Maxime Martin knows that Richard Westbrook is a mighty competitor, and great job done by Peter Dumbreck equally in that car with Richard Westbrook to put it into position to give Richard Westbrook the chance to consolidate the 2nd place.
Definitely. So it's Maxime Martin who takes the win along with Fred Makovic. 2nd for Westbrook, and my mind's gone blank. And 3rd place was Jamie Campbell-Walter and David Brabham. Peter Dumbreck, of course, finished 2nd alongside Richard Westbrook. So doesn't look too worn out, really, does he?
Well,
race winner Maxime Martin.
I mean, these are hot cars, and it's a warm day, and it's a very high work rate circuit. Jamie Campbell-Walter is probably more representative of a normal human being because he tends to sweat like a racehorse.
He will no doubt be happy with that 3rd position. They've had 3 3rd places this season, 1 in a qualifying race and 2 championship race 3rd positions. They haven't actually finished any higher. They'll be hoping that can change tomorrow with a strong starting position. And also, of course, we've got the 2 Nissans on the podium are from different teams. The Sumo Power GT Nissan finishing in 3rd, with the JR Motorsports Nissan of Richard Westbrook and Peter Dumbreck coming home in 2nd place. I think on today's pace, we've seen that the Ford GT has a lot of pace, and I think their teammates, Mark Henrici in the 40 car, they'll be hoping they can sort it out for qualifying tomorrow, because they could be, right up with this kind of top group.
Well, I mean, they'll start from whatever position it is. Henrici will be 11th, just outside the top 10 in the championship race. So that's going to be, it's a big ask, because we have seen from the qualifying race there are opportunities to pass, but a lot of it's going to be about being patient rather than being overly aggressive. And to come from 10th, to score points, possible. To get on the podium, very difficult.
So let's hear from our race winners, Maxime Martin and Fred Makovic.
Congratulations, Max. You turn your 1st pole into a win.
Yeah, it's fantastic for the whole team. Fred did a perfect start, perfect stint, and the car was very good. So Richard Westbrook was behind, but no, it was good and a very good race, and I hope we can do it the same tomorrow.
And Fred, congratulations. It certainly is the track for the Ford GT.
Yeah, sure, it's perfect for the team because they do an unbelievable job, and it was not so easy to exit first at the first corner, but after it was not, the car was really constant. It's perfect for us.
Thank you.
Excellent, great to hear from our 2 winners. They seem pretty comfortable, pretty confident with the car as well, and that's a very important thing in a long race such as this. They knew exactly what the car was going to do at every corner. The 41 Mark VDS Racing team taking the victory then, as we see the Exim Bank Team China car just about to be cleared. Neither of those cars finishing the race, a real shame, as we will now go down to our second place men, Richard Westbrook and Peter Dumbreck, there with Haley.
Congratulations, Richard. Finally, another good result for you.
Yeah, and it's a long time coming, and yeah, we're delighted to be back on the podium, and completely unexpected here. It's not a track that we turned up expecting much. We were hoping to pick up some good points, but we didn't even dream of a second position when we walked the track on Thursday. But we've worked tirelessly with the engineers, and they've given us a really good car on a slow track, which is a bit of a Nissan shocker. And I just wish we had this car at Sachsenring and Navarra, because yeah, it was nice to drive, but the Ford just had that little bit too much. It was a bit too comfortable to him.
And Peter, congratulations. No, that upgrade and that extra time been spent on the car certainly paid off for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the break in between. Okay, the car's been getting shipped, but they've been working back at the factory and thinking of ways to improve the car, and it's really worked for us. So hopefully we can take that on for the remaining. Well, we've got tomorrow obviously, but the remaining 2 rounds as well. And it'd be nice if 22 could score at least 1 win before the end of the year. A proper win.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
As they've said, it's been a very frustrating season for them. They're lying quite a way down in the championship compared to where you would expect them to be, down in 11th place. Good start of the season, as I said, 2 podiums in Abu Dhabi, a win in the Algarve, but they've had 5 retirements so far this season. Let's hear from 3rd position men, Jamie Campbell-Walter and teammate David Brabham.
Jamie, congratulations. Great result for the team and for the GTR.
Yeah, Brabs and I have had a good run of late, and seems to continue. We came here not thinking that the GTR would be that great, but it's actually turned out to have 2 cars on the podium. Another one in 5th place. I'm not sure where Michael finished, so great result, great starting position for tomorrow. This man did a great move on our teammate Benaldi, so really happy.
Congratulations, David. Is this where the birthday celebrations start to begin?
Not birthday yet, but yeah, no, it's like Jamie said, it's a great result for the GTR and Sumo Power, and well done to Car 22 for finishing 2nd. So we got the Nissans up front there for tomorrow. Very much looking forward to the race. I feel like momentum's kind of building for us. So great job by the team, and they gave us a pretty good car in the race.
Thank you.
Well, as we celebrate the top 3, which we will do in a moment, it's worth pointing out the number 3 Texas Racing Aston Martin, Clivio Piccioni and Steph Dusseldorf did a fantastic job, because they started down in 9th place on the grid. So to get up to 4th, it was a great drive. They gave us plenty of entertainment.
Well, I mean, certainly Clivio Piccioni did give us a lot of entertainment during his driving stint and got that Aston Martin into position, which then was the platform for Steph Dusseldorf to continue. And again, a great manoeuvre on him to get round the Corvette towards the end of the race, and once he was passed, then he just steamed forward.
Absolutely. So as I say, both Exim Bank Team China cars retiring, which is a real shame for the Chinese fans that have turned out. They didn't even get to see their man Ho Pin Tung race, but he will be starting tomorrow's championship race. So as long as they can get those cars sorted by the start of tomorrow's race, they should be able to see him race. So we are now going to hear from Jean-Pierre Delaporte, and he is the manager of Mark VDS Racing.
Congratulations, Jean-Mi. Can you convert it to another win tomorrow?
We hope so, because it's the 3rd time we won in Saturday. So we will pray all the night to win next day. But I'm very happy for the team, because he's worked very hard. And this season was very difficult for everybody, because we made a lot of things. And congratulations for them.
Thank you.
So the manager of the winning team, no doubt delighted with the performance that his Ford GT has shown out there today. And as we said, we weren't particularly expecting it as such. Having a little chat with Laurence, who's the manager of the other Ford GT, the Belgian racing cars, possibly getting some setup tips or something like that. 1.7 seconds the gap at the end then between the Ford and the Nissan of Martin and Makovicky, ahead of Westbrook and Dumbreck. And then it was 30 seconds back to the Nissan in 3rd place of Jamie Campbell-Walter and David Brabham. A real dominating performance. They too were quite clear of the Aston in 4th. We had the Nissan in 5th. Then we had the 2 Lamborghinis in 6th and 7th. again, fairly close towards the end. That battle down towards with the two Aston Martins was very close indeed. You can see just 1.5 seconds from Winkelhock and Basseng down to Hohenadel and Piccini down in 9th place. Then we had 2 more Ford GTs, the second Mark VDS car and the Belgian racing car of Nygaard and Hershey, Henrici and Leinders, with the Nissan GTR finishing in 12th place. Our championship leaders Lucas Luhr and Michael Crum with no points to show from this afternoon and not really a very good starting position. Benjamin Lauenberger and Michael Lauert got to the end of the race, which is good news for them in their first race. Jan Clary and Antoine Leclerc getting to the end as well for the first time since Silverstone. Jonathan Kennard and Christopher Brook did get back out, but lost a lot of laps in the process. Jimenez and Rossi retired with a few laps to go. Thomas Enger and Muller also lost a number of laps with car problems, and we saw Hoping-Tung and Jerome Denber out very early on in the race, which is a real shame, but hopefully they can get those cars sorted for tomorrow. Here's a look at the championship. As we say, in the top 6, nothing really changing, because I don't think any of them scored points out there this afternoon, but things are going to change, apart from obviously the 1 point game for that Basseng and Winkelhock will claim. But tomorrow is where the big points changes are going to occur. It's still Crum and Luhr at the top, but they will be starting considerably behind their main championship rivals of Marcus Winkelhock and Mark Basseng. In the Teams Championship, JR Motorsports and alinkle.com Munich Motorsports now tied on points at the top, and only a point between the two Aston Martin teams, Hextis and Young Driver. So we're really going to see some inter-manufacturer rivalry coming into the remainder of the season. Of course, starting with tomorrow's championship race, then we've got Mark VDS boistering up their points tally with that win in 6th. Swiss Racing Team in 7th, with Belgian Racing down in 8th position in the team classification. So we witnessed a pretty exciting race, actually. There was plenty of action throughout that race, which was good to watch, and hopefully we'll see more of the same tomorrow.
Yes, Count van der Straten, the owner of the team, who's been an incredible supporter of motorsport globally for longer than I would care to remember, or his family certainly have, and a great day for him. Another victory and delight indeed for the Ford GT team to move into Sunday's race. You were talking about we didn't know what to expect, and quite rightly so, because there's never been a race of this level at the Ordos International Circuit before, and it's proven that we can have entertaining and exciting motor racing. It is difficult around certain parts of the track. It is very tight and sinuous for a large part of it, but look after your car, look after your tires, and it is possible to get past. And even in some parts of the circuit that we didn't think were possible, such as into turn 17, we saw a few rude moves, and we saw 1 or 2 that were well thought out.
Absolutely. So an entertaining debut for the Ordos International Circuit, and an entertaining debut for FAI GT1 World Championship here in China. So it was great to see the racing around the circuit, and it's also kept nice and clear, hasn't it?
Beautiful day. I mean, it's turned out a cracking afternoon, and the fans all around the racetrack, I would think, would go away thoroughly entertained, and hopefully come back tomorrow and see even better.
So it was on pole position. We had Maxime Martin and Fred Makovicky. It was Fred Makovicky starting on the front row of the grid. And there were our previous championship leaders. Richard Westbrook would take over the car later on, after a great battle for second place meant that Peter Dumbreck had held on to that position. We all got through turn 1 fairly cleanly, which was great to see, apart from a little tap here. The number 12 car of Michael Rossi getting stuck in.
Yes, and the other Corvette of Jerome Denber, there you see it, the whole front of the car has been removed. That car was retired immediately. There's the move, the Baz Leinders move, and he gained advantage from doing so. And did he give it back up again, or are we looking further around the racetrack? The point was that do something like that, you're legally required to step back. But there's the other battle, and into turn 17 again. That was one of the more rude moves, bashing down the inside, splitting the two Lamborghinis. Again, the Corvette running wide, coming out of turn 10. As the battle through the field, the race lead was being dominated by the Ford GT and the Nissan GTR, but it was the midfield battle for the final point of this race that was the entertainment. Here's the lead car coming in, the change of drivers. Makovicky gets in, Maxime Martin gets in. Peter Dumbreck did a great job in the Nissan, hands over to Richard Westbrook. and the gap between the two cars from coming in and returning to the track was virtually status quo.
Absolutely, it was very interesting to see the two begin to close in after that, but as you say, up at the front it was status quo for the remainder of the race. A very, very strong performance from Maxime Martin after his fantastic pole position lap. Him and Fredrik Makiavicki taking the victory, taking the checkered flag, and taking 8 points and pole position for tomorrow's race. So my name is Jack Nichols. I've been joined by John Watson. We've had Haley Coxon in the pits. Join us tomorrow for the championship race.